So folks, first off, I have to be very careful of what wording I use in this video so that YouTube does not throttle this video. So if you hear me using weird words or bleeping out certain words, that will be why. But in today's video, you are going to learn what happened. You're going to learn the fate of that evil monster that would cut the heads off of journalists and aid workers in the country of Syria. And then I have to say the word group. His group would then post those videos online so that it would shock the world, and then also as a recruitment tool so that other radicalized young men in that area would join their group. So the man behind that mask that we would see on those horrific videos, that man behind that mask, his name was Mohammed Emwazi, and here's a super brief history about him. He was actually born in Kuwait, and then when he was about 6 years old, his family actually moved to London, so that is why he would have that British accent in those horrible videos that they would show. And then it's believed sometime in his late teens or his early 20s is when he actually became radicalized and then started seeing the West as the enemy. And then in 2012 or 2013, he secretly traveled to Syria, where he ended up joining his group. And then he actually rose through the ranks fairly quickly, and then actually became the main executioner of Western hostages that, again, his group had captured. And so it was during this time in his life that all of those execution videos started coming out, and that would be Mohammed Emwazi that would be behind that face mask holding that knife right before, again, when he would cut the heads off of those poor innocent journalists and aid workers. But besides being the executioner and all these high profile beheadings that he would do, another thing that again really set him apart from the other brutal evil monsters in his group was again the fact that he had that British accent, and then he was actually earned the nickname, I think through the West, as Jihadi John, because it was obvious that he was from the West and not one of the normal Middle Eastern men that would come from different countries, again, to join his group to fight. But you'll probably remember his victims as being journalist James Foley, journalist Stephen Sotloff, humanitarian aid worker David Haynes, and also Japanese journalist Kenji Gato, who I believe is on the left of this picture, and then also Hirana Yukawa, and I'm probably butchering these names, but I believe he is on the right side of this photo, and I believe he was murdered the same way that Hirana was murdered. And then there was also a British aid worker by the name of Alan Henning. And by the way, welcome to my channel, also my bug out location. My channel is all about prepping and self-defense, so this video is different than the types of videos that I usually do. But if you like prepping and self-defense videos, then go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Also, please give this video the thumbs up and the like button. But now, since we know a little bit about Mohammed Emwazi and also about his poor, unfortunate victims, let's learn about how we identified him, located him, and then eventually he met his fate. Now, at first, when these videos started surfacing, we didn't know who he was. All we knew was that we had some unknown guy with a British accent that was doing all these horrific executions on these videos. So again, we did not know who he was. So then what happened, US and British intelligence really set their sights on trying to figure out who this guy was, tried to identify who he was. And so then as they spoke to informants identified him as Mohammed Emwazi, but of course with them just given that name, they didn't know for certain that it was him. So then they started comparing his voice, and using, computers and stuff like that to really do the comparison. But they started comparing his voice in those execution videos to his voice recordings of him as a teenager before he had went to Syria, and then they realized that he was the same guy, and of course at that point they positively identified him as Mohammed Emwazi. And then, even though his phone and the apps that he was using was encrypted, the US and British intelligence services were able to monitor his cell phone use and get a pretty good basic idea of where he was at and how active he was. And then a drone actually spotted or found a known group, I gotta use the word his group, safe house in Syria, and then they really started using these drones watching that safe house. And then on November 12th, 2015, at approximately 12:50 a.m. Raqqa, Syria time, again using surveillance drones, we spotted Emwazi leaving that safe house, that group safe house, walk out of that safe house and get into I believe a white Toyota with tinted windows. And little did Emwazi know that high above him in the sky were our MQ-9 Reaper drones ready to strike. And just moments after Emwazi entered that vehicle, a Hellfire missile screamed from the sky, and the explosion incinerated the car that he was in, killing both Emwazi and his buddy instantly. And just like that, the man that had taunted the world with this horrible, horrible videos, he was hunted and he was tracked and he was erased from our world. His reign of terror was now over with. Now, the only unfortunate thing is that his death was very quick. I mean, he probably did not suffer like his victims did. In fact, he probably never even knew what hit him. And that, in my eyes, that is unfortunate for how evil of a person he was. And by the way, with all this war and uncertainty that's going on right now as I film this video, you may not always be able to get the medicines that you need for whatever chronic conditions that you have, like type 2 diabetes or high blood pressure, etc. So if you want to learn how you can make your own medicines using the weeds and the trees that grow naturally around you, I wrote a physical book. It's only 25 bucks at the time of this video, but I wrote a physical book that contains hundreds of pages that gives you step-by-step directions, very easy directions, again, of how you can make a whole bunch of different medicines, homemade medicines, again, that will help with things like type 2 diabetes or high blood pressure, or even just headaches. And I will put a link to the book that I wrote down below so you can check it out if you want to. But to use the book, all you got to do is look towards the front of it and you will see a list, a whole list of the different elements of medicines that you can make yourself, and then just go to that page to get easy step-by-step directions on exactly how to make that medicine that you need in a grid down situation when you can't make it to the doctor or the hospital. And then if you want to see a whole bunch of different videos that show you how you can make those different homemade medicines that's in my book, then click on the video that should be appearing on the screen just about now to learn what most other people don't know. Anyways, folks, this is enough internet for me today. I do need to get back to work, but folks, if you made it this far, hey, thank you very much for watching, and I pray that you have a good night.